In this video, we're reviewing Undertone and flipping the script with a reverse cocktail called the Anadrome, today on the Martini Shot. Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot, the home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. Before we get into the review, let's whip ourselves up a drink. A lot of the horror from this movie derives from playing things in reverse, so I wanted to find a way to best illustrate that in a cocktail. I've decided to turn to the world of reverse cocktails, cocktails that swap the measurements of their ingredients to make a slightly different drink. And that's what I'm going to do here with a riff on a Manhattan that will have a noticeably lower ABV, and the use of specifically Rosso vermouth is going to bring about more herbal and spiced notes. With one of these babies, it can get you through any haunted podcast. Ghosts aren't as scary when you're a little bit tipsy. Let's get into it. This is going to be a mixed cocktail, so go ahead and grab yourself a mixing glass, and we are going to start off with 1 ounce of rye whiskey. And then our main spirit is going to be that Rosso vermouth, and you're going to be using 2 ounces. And then a typical Manhattan usually calls for 2 dashes of Angostura bitters and 1 dash of orange bitters, but I think it'd be fun to switch it up this time. So we're going to be doing 1 dash of Angostura bitters and 2 dashes of orange bitters. Go ahead and throw some ice in your mixing glass and stir to chill. Once you're done, go ahead and grab yourself a chilled coupe glass. And while a cherry is sometimes a garnish, I'm going to be dropping it right into the cocktail and including a little bit of that maraschino syrup as well. And then you can go ahead and strain your cocktail on top. And there you go, now you have the Anadrome. It's unmistakably a Manhattan, but you're definitely picking up on a lot of different notes than you usually would with a just straightforward Manhattan. It's obviously a lot lighter. It's a lot more crisp. You're getting the vermouth way ahead of the rye whiskey. The rye whiskey is still there, but you're only getting a very small burn compared to the much larger burn you usually get from a drink like this. It's easily way more approachable than the traditional Manhattan in my opinion, but I think you also need to enjoy vermouth to get the most out of this cocktail. And that Rosso vermouth is very nice. You're definitely getting a little bit more herbal notes from it, a tad bit of spice that you usually don't find even with the rye whiskey. And you can also always alter the cocktail a little bit with the addition of the cherry. Definitely putting the syrup in there sweetens it up a little bit, makes it even more approachable than it usually would be. But if you're thinking of getting into Manhattans, this might actually be a pretty solid place to start. It's not going to be as oppressively whiskey forward as the traditional cocktail, but you're still going to get a lot of the same flavor notes that you can ease yourself into until you're ready to try the real thing. Now that we have our drink, let's get right into the review of Undertone. Nowadays, horror movies can't be touted as anything less than the scariest thing you've ever seen. We saw it with movies like Longlegs and Hereditary, and that just sets people up to have some very strong opinions when the film doesn't reach the heights they were anticipating. You either walk out of the theater swimming in your own pee, or it's a huge disappointment. It's an uphill battle a lot of films can't overcome, and unfortunately, that's kind of where Undertone landed for me. Don't get me wrong, this is an admirable first feature that looks great for only costing $500,000. There is an obvious understanding in how tension can be crafted with the bare minimum, which is where the film tends to shine the brightest. It's mostly a success in the technical department, but while it succeeds at looking and acting like a horror film, it doesn't quite go all the way. Undertone sets the stage for spooky shenanigans, but rarely does it lead to a satisfying payoff for either the audience or the main character. The whole thing feels like a pulled punch, whether it be because they didn't have the means to execute something more engaging, or they didn't have the creativity to pull it off. Sincerely hoping it's a case of the former, because this does show promise, but like most podcasts, it's sometimes all fluff and no substance. Undertone follows Evie, a woman looking after her dying mother in her old home. But when the sun goes down, she records a supernatural podcast with her friend Justin, where the two debate the validity of scary stories and videos. An email containing 10 audio files suddenly finds its way into their inbox, and as they start to listen to them one by one, a darkness begins to overtake Evie that draws some frightening parallels between her present and the evils of the past. This is essentially a one-woman show, one that Nina Kiri manages to run pretty well. This whole thing is more or less carried by her facial expressions, her deliveries, and her reactions to the growingly uneasy setting around her. She does get someone to bounce off of occasionally, whether it be her voice-only co-host or her comatose mother, but this is largely all weighed on Kiri's performance. It's fairly good, even though the natural structure of the film doesn't leave her with much to do. A lot of the performance is her getting uneasy at her computer, then uneasily walking up the stairs to her mother's room. The film rinses and repeats this structure, and while Evie's mental state starts to get more and more uneasy, we only see this in slight changes to her personality rather than larger physical moments of challenge. There's a lot of repetition in this film, for good and for bad. The positive side to it is that the setup kinda works. Having the characters make their way through increasingly uneasy video files in the dark will undoubtedly be tense for most. But you also get the feeling of the film spinning its wheels, running in circles because it's boxed itself into a structural corner. Repetition can be fine, but you should still feel like something worthwhile is happening to the story and the characters. At times, this really feels like a short film stretched to the length of a feature. Sure, things technically happen, but the film doesn't go too far in its build up to its climax. A lot of this comes down to both pacing and payoff, with little decisions that kind of just made this drag for me. Firstly, letting us know that there are 10 audio files actually slows the film down because you know it doesn't end until we get to that 10th one. But on that journey, whenever they interrupt the flow of listening to all of them, I felt like the film was moving away from the interesting parts of the story too often. The most unrealistic part of the whole thing was that they take 3 days to record an hour-long podcast. I can accept ghosts and demons, but not that. And that brings me to the payoff because, like I said, the film is great at building tension. The camera often puts a lot of emphasis on the negative space of the house, repeating shots of dark corners and the stairs to build that implication that something could be there. Nothing ever is, but still, something could be there. But it gets to a point where it's all tension and no payoff. Sure, it throws in 1 or 2 government-mandated jump scare noises, but they never feel connected to what the camera work and the blocking are trying to frighten you with. And it's a shame that the technicals are so well done because the rest of the story and scares just can't keep up. Listening to reversed audio of children's lullabies is very ingrained in the mythos of internet horror this film pays homage to, but it's not exactly all that unnerving. Luckily, most of this is salvaged by the impressive, all-encompassing sound design that really makes you feel like you're right in the room with headphones on. But the way the horror ties into the bigger ideas of the film just ended up feeling flat to me. Grief, isolation, religious trauma, and parental fears all hover around this film, but some of them really just feel tacked on to fleshing out the narrative. These themes don't always feel like they bolster the film, but rather decorate it because these are the elements we've come to expect from A24. And while the film is certainly unnerving in the moment, it lacks the kind of horror that latches onto you, that follows you home and rests in your brain after all this is said and done. This isn't doing for MP3 files what Jaws did for the ocean. The audio files aren't exactly unsettling themselves, and even when they start to draw parallels to Evie's situation, it just feels like something you've already seen before. Undertone takes a big step from films like Unfriended, moving from beyond the confines of a computer while still tackling the aesthetics that come with it. And like films like Unfriended, it's a bit mixed. It's a combination of the horrors of domestic darkness like in Skinamarink and the foreboding encroach of media-driven curses like The Ring, but there's only so many successes that come from this particular niche. Sure, it will have you shielding your eyes and turning away because it knows how to spark a primal sense of fear, but it may also leave you disappointed when this buildup doesn't ultimately amount to anything. I see this as a great exercise in horror rather than a total package. So while this is a solid demonstration for the first-time director, I'm gonna hold out until his next film to see what he's really got. But it looks like his next film is a paranormal activity movie, so 3rd time's the charm, maybe. For my rating, I'm giving this film 2.5 Virgin Marys out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Martini Shot. If you saw Undertone, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media channels. Those links are down in the description below. If you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.